Meemaw Audio presents The Untamed Passions of a Gifted Man by Stanley Fongod, read by Johnny Clarkson. Someone once said, "Men live by intervals of reason, under the sovereignty of humor and passion." So it is with Alan, a preacher's son, fighting for his place in his church, his life on the streets, and his life as a Marine on a foreign battlefield. Alan seems always to be fighting for someone else in each ring. His trainer who tells him he's shoddy and a champ. His father who tells him what he envisioned him to be. His church that expects holiness, and his country that expects him to die for their sins. He is possessed by the dreams of others, and a constant battle for acceptance. A young man who is fairly gregarious, too, having a mind soaked with endless possibilities. He tries to serve the different dreams that others have placed in his head, and he tries to do it with his humor and with all the passions he has in him. Alan seems controlled by the passions, the dreams, the plans of others, and there doesn't seem to be room for his own desires, until, of course, they break out and cause him trouble. Aristotle said all human actions have one or more of these 7 causes: chance, nature, compulsions, habit, reason, passion, and desire. This is the story of Alan's passions, kept in check when he is in control, and untamed when he allows them to control him. Difficult for an intemperate person, and these are some of his tendencies. This is also the story of his gifts, ignored by many, stifled by some, and manipulated by others. Such is the passion of the untamed soul when it rears up like an unbroken stallion, dumps the rider off its back, and runs off to escape any kind of control. Destruction, not freedom, may lie in wait for it, but it has to run. It has to wear down and wear out its adrenaline supply, no matter the cost. This also is the story of Alan's faith, not at all fragile, but hard to obey, when the decisions have to be made. At the airport, his lungs beg for air and his legs demand rest, but Mark can't afford to stop. "Run, Kenny, run," he shouts at his friend Kenny. Kenny shouts back over his shoulder, "What did you expect? Time doesn't wait. I told you we'd be late. Africans just can't keep time." The trip to the airport was a bother, but the run down the terminal hallway to catch the plane is a real lung burster. Suddenly, Kenny stops, and Mark almost runs him over. "What are you doing, Kenny? Why are you stopping?" Mark gasps as his lungs take advantage of the stop to heave for more air. "Do you know where you're going? What exit is he coming out of? What's his flight number?" Mark answers impatiently, bending over to hold his aching legs. He gasps out his answer. "The plane is coming from Iraq. What do you want with numbers?" Kenny's lungs were now seizing, but at that moment he refused to take his eyes off the callboard. "You better get back to Africa, buddy. Surely you do not have any ideas about his flight number and exit gate. What do you mean?" "Yes, there are a lot of planes that come in from Iraq, and they all have flight numbers, you know, numbers that identify them, and they will have to be assigned a gate and a jetway attached to it so the plane can dock." Mark straightens up, ready to run again. "Well, Mr. PhD, I am not that gormless. While you're wasting time trying to figure out call signs, it's getting later and later. Look for 2 o'clock. The plane is coming in at 2. Look for a 2 there." Kenny's eyes searched for the information on the callboard, and then he finds what they are looking for. Just as his right leg tightens up and sends a severe cramping pain up his spine, he tries to ignore it and begins pointing at the callboard. There, man, I see a plane coming from Baghdad. That's in Iraq, you know, and arriving at LAX. Looks like it's been delayed for 30 minutes somewhere. Arriving at gate 7 in 10 minutes. Mark takes a deep breath and sighs. "Okay, then, we have 10 minutes. We'll get there in 5. I hope there's a quick coffee shop near that gate." Kenny begins quickly limping towards the gate, pointing in the direction signs to gate 7 as he moves. Mark is not so quick, even though his legs are fine, but he just doesn't want to hurry anymore. In his excitement, Kenny went skipping over several handheld pieces of luggage as he was weaving his way through arriving passengers, heading to the baggage claim area. By the time they arrive at the terminal, the plane has landed, and passengers are already in the lounge calling to each other and embracing those welcoming them. "You see him anywhere?" says Mark. "There are so many people crowded all around us," he replies. "How can we see him from here?" Mark looks at Kenny for a moment and then continues to search faces. "Kenny, you talk like you don't know that boy. You've walked right by him. He's a mountain of a man. How can you miss him?" Another cramp seizes Kenny's other leg, and he bends down for a moment to massage the sore muscle. "Yeah, he's one big dude, all right. You know, they tend to send the best out there. They sent my buddy, and thank God he's coming home safe. I wish all the boys could." Mark is distracted for a moment by a very beautiful girl in a low-topped blouse and a very short skirt with a provocative rear end. For a moment he forgets that he is looking for someone. Then he jerks his back, feeling a bit ashamed for allowing himself to be distracted. "Yes, he is coming home safe, but I can tell you he'll not be feeling lucky, Kenny. From what I know of that boy, he'd have been happy staying in Iraq the rest of his life. He will have absquatulated this hellhole if he could have kept his father alive. What do we do with him now, the way things have become?" Kenny's eyes suddenly catch sight of something, but Mark continues. "I don't know why my brother had to die. I wish he could have just managed to live until someone kicked those frogs out of the church. You see why I don't go to church?" Kenny poked Mark just as he finished his complaint. "I see him. Mark, look over there. I see him. There he is." Alan walks down the escalator into the baggage claim area in army fatigues, dragging a duffel bag, looking tired, but smiles as someone reaches out a hand and pats him on the back. Another person comes out of nowhere and grabs his duffel bag. "Thank you for your service, young man," an older man says as he salutes Alan. "Son, take his bag," he says to the teenager who is already trying to lift it. Alan returns the old man's salute, gives a weary smile, and waves off the boy trying to carry his bag. He is thinking, "You just don't know. Just leave me alone." But instead he says, "Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I can take my own bag, but I thank you for your kindness." The older man begins to talk as Mark and Kenny reach Alan. "I remember coming home from Vietnam. Weren't nobody at the airport waiting for me when I got home. Can't tell you how I felt." The man stops talking as Mark and Kenny reach them. The man tries to finish and disengage quickly. "Well, that was too many years ago now, and that story is too old to tell anyways. Welcome home, boy, and God bless you." Quickly the boy and his father disappear back into the crowd. Despite his anger at his brother's death, Mark admires Alan, the fit of his uniform, and is kept from speaking for a moment by the pride in his heart and the appearance of his brother in uniform. Alan smiles at his Uncle Mark and tries not to stare at the tear in Mark's eye as he lays down his bag and extends a hand to his family. "Uncle Mark, you never change, do you?" Alan extends a hand. Mark turns for a moment, pulls a handkerchief from his pocket to make it look like he's blowing his nose. He wipes the tear away quickly and then grabs Alan's hand. "Look at you, Mark," he says as another tear appears, and embarrasses him by gliding down his cheek before he can stop it. Alan quickly turns to Kenny to allow Uncle Mark a chance to take control of his emotions. He offers Kenny his hand. "Thank you for coming, Kenny." Kenny is trying to laugh off his emotions. "Hey, man, you kidding me? I had to come pick up my boy, my best buddy." Mark reaches down to take Alan's duffel bag, but Alan stops him. "Come on, Uncle Mark. You know better than that." Mark again reaches for his handkerchief, blows his nose, and then says, "We saw some good places on our way here. How about a beer and a burrito for the road, eh, Alan?" Alan looks wearily at Uncle Mark, smiles, and declines. "I appreciate it. I do, Uncle Mark. But can we just go home? I'm not feeling up to a beer and a brat right now. Maybe later, please." Please?